Hi, today we're going to look in Galatians chapter 5 verse 20 at sorcery. Now, I'm sure the first thing that comes to your mind, as it does mine, when we think of sorcery, that we probably get this image of this person in a big flowing gown and a big pointy long hat with a magical wand and a big long nose with a big wart on the end of it or something like that. And that Hollywood seems to give us that picture. But, sorcery here is speaking about something, I think, that is totally different. So sorcery here, the Greek word for sorcery is the Greek word pharmakia, where we get our English word pharmacy. And so you might be thinking now, is this relating to drugs, is it? And yes, the answer is definitely yes. And so sorcery is one of those things that, we may be thinking of somebody, making this potion and bat wings and all this sort of, fingernails and of people and, making this potion to cause a person, if they drink it, to respond or to be or to think that there's somebody else. And you know what? That is not so far from the truth. And so sorcery here, it actually means about the very effects or on a person of drugs and drug-related state. And so we are seeing today that, sorcery, again, is something that is right before our very eyes. I mean, we look at the problem that society has with ICE and the police and, doing their best to try and, stamp this out. But, when we look at sorcery in the area that people in society, being in a drug-induced state, doing things that a person normally wouldn't do, and we're seeing it happen. And sorcery is all around us. Now, as I said, it's not like this big boiling pot with this potion being made, but it's very close to it that in places in the world there are people making drugs, and the drugs are to influence the state of the mind of a person to cause them to do things that they normally would not do. And so, as well, people taking drugs of various different kinds to try and calm them down so they're able to cope with life and the pressures of life. And, God had never intended it to be that way at all. And so again, when we look at the word sorcery, we can think, oh, well, we've come a long way since the New Testament when that was written, and so we don't really have sorcerers as such anymore. In some countries that I've been to, I've been told by the locals that they have their witch doctors and they practice sorcery and all that sort of thing. I don't doubt that for 1 minute. But here in the Western world, we think, we're so sophisticated, advanced, and the reality is in some areas we are not. And we have a huge problem with sorcery in society today. And the problem that we are having today is a generation being induced on drugs and a society just changing so much. There was one town that Chantel and I went through to visit a number of years ago, and it was a beautiful little town. We spent the night there and continued the next day. Now, a number of years later, we went to stop into this same town because it was such a pretty little town, welcoming people. But we noticed straight away as we went into this town that a lot of the shops were boarded up, and we're wondering, where is everybody? And we found out that this town was now known as the ice capital of New South Wales, and ice being the drug ice. And, it had totally overrun this town. We are seeing the very act of sorcery taking place. And the people who are doing this, they're obviously making a lot of money out of it, but we've got to find out who is behind it all. And yes, that's right, it is the devil. And if he can control the mind of a person through mind-altering drugs, he can control an entire nation. And so sorcery is something certainly a work of the flesh without a doubt. And if you know of anybody or you yourself, addicted to any kind of drug or mind-altering substance, know this for sure, that again, that God in heaven does love you very much, and He has a way out for you. And I have known of people who have been in the place of, drug addicted, couldn't see any way out, and yet they yielded to God and allowed the Holy Spirit to lead them from darkness to light. And in that process, when the Holy Spirit led them, they ended up surrendering their life to Christ, and the Holy Spirit led them into all truth and led them into fellowship with God, which led into relationship with God when they surrendered their life to Christ. And it was there that the Holy Spirit did an amazing work and delivered them from the effects of this sorcery, of this drug-induced state. And so, when we walk in the Spirit, we will not fulfill the lust of the flesh. Anyway, join me tomorrow and we will continue. We're going to speak tomorrow about hatred, which is going to be a good one. I just love speaking about hatred. Anyway, be blessed and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.